Something had already begun changing. Those who recognized it first did not hesitate. He stood in silence. Stability begins in the mind long before reality. Messages arrived, but he did not respond. Silence protected his thinking. This estate was built for isolation. Awareness protects control. Privacy protects clarity. Vulnerability appears when awareness disappears. Every movement was controlled. Discipline creates stability under pressure. Others had already moved quietly. Powerful individuals act early. His eyes remained focused. Observation reveals truth before it is visible. Isolation allowed for clear thought. Clarity only appears in silence. He entered without hesitation. Certainty protects control. This room existed for awareness, not comfort. Who else was expected? His breathing remained steady. Discipline protects stability. He showed no fear. Fear weakens clarity. Everything remained protected. Protection preserves awareness. This place protected his focus. Focus protected his advantage. He remained calm. Awareness had already arrived. His mind remained stable. Stability creates control. He moved forward. Hesitation creates vulnerability. What was ahead? He had already accepted the new reality. It had already changed. Observation creates understanding. He saw what others missed. Understanding creates clarity. He had gained his advantage. Clarity creates confidence. He knew exactly what to do. Confidence protects stability. He was protecting his future. Stability protects survival. Something threatened that survival. Everything had become clear. The path was now visible. Fear was not useful. Only awareness mattered now. Awareness protects control. He was controlling the outcome. Control protects stability. This was the stability that mattered. He remained prepared, ready for what was coming. Preparation protects survival. This was the ultimate preparation. Timing determines advantage. This was his moment. Advantage determines outcome. He knew the end result. He had already accepted it. The change was complete. Awareness had arrived. Had anyone else even realized? He was prepared before anyone noticed. Would they be ready? They did not arrive together. They arrived separately, quietly, and without attention. Because powerful individuals do not move publicly when awareness requires privacy. Each of them had already recognized the same shift, and each of them had already decided to act before others understood. The gates opened without hesitation because access had already been approved long before their arrival. This place was prepared, protected, and isolated because preparation protects control. Who had prepared this meeting before anyone arrived? He walked forward calmly, without fear, without uncertainty, because uncertainty weakens decision quality, and decision quality determines survival at their level. What decision were they preparing to make? Each arrival happened independently, but their purpose was the same, because awareness had already aligned their actions without communication. How had awareness connected them without words? The room remained silent, waiting, prepared, because silence allows clarity and clarity allows accurate understanding. What truth would be revealed inside this room? They did not greet each other emotionally, because emotion weakens awareness, and awareness was now more important than comfort. Why did none of them speak immediately? Each of them remained calm, controlled, and completely aware, because they had already accepted what others had not yet noticed. What had they accepted? Everything remained protected, isolated, and controlled, because protection preserves clarity. What clarity were they protecting? Their calmness reflected preparation, not confusion, because preparation eliminates fear. How long had they been preparing? They had arrived ready, without hesitation, because hesitation weakens advantage. What advantage did they already have? Observation allowed them to understand without speaking. Their stability reflected discipline developed through years of pressure. What had trained them for this moment? Movement began quietly, because action follows awareness. What action would they take? He already understood everything clearly. His movement reflected confidence, because confidence reflects certainty. Why was he so certain? Everything remained under control, because control protects stability. They did not need words, because awareness had already aligned their understanding. They understood what was coming next. Their calmness reflected acceptance. What had they accepted? He had already accepted the future. What future had already begun? Fear had no value now. Why had fear disappeared? Only awareness mattered. What had awareness revealed? Only preparation mattered. What had they prepared for? They were ready. They had already decided, because awareness had arrived early. Why had they seen it first? They had acted early, because early action protects control. Would others act in time? and they were already ahead before anyone else even realized what had begun. Would anyone ever catch up? No one spoke immediately because they understood that the most important decisions are never made in emotional moments. They are made in complete silence when awareness becomes stronger than fear and clarity becomes stronger than uncertainty. Every individual in that room had already reached the same realization independently. Had they already decided what needed to be done? His expression remained completely calm, not because nothing was happening, but because he had trained himself to remain stable when everything else begins to change. Stability is not natural. It is built through years of discipline and pressure. What had prepared him for this exact moment? He moved forward slowly, not showing hesitation, not showing doubt. Because hesitation weakens control, and control protects survival. He understood that every movement now carried meaning. What action was he about to take? The room remained completely silent because silence allows accurate perception. Words can distract, but observation reveals truth. What truth had already become clear to them? Everything remained protected, isolated, and controlled because powerful individuals prepare before others even recognize the threat. What had they already prepared for? He had already accepted the reality that others had not yet seen. Acceptance allows preparation. Preparation allows control. What reality had he accepted first? His body remained completely still because physical stability reflects mental stability. Mental stability protects decision quality. What decision was forming in his mind? They did not interrupt him because they understood the importance of timing. Timing determines advantage. Was this the moment everything would change? Outside, everything remained quiet, but inside, awareness had already begun changing everything. How much had already changed without anyone noticing? He remained calm because calmness protects clarity. Clarity protects control. What clarity did he now possess? Fear had no value here. Only awareness mattered. Why had fear completely disappeared? They understood that hesitation would create vulnerability. Vulnerability could not be allowed. What vulnerability were they preventing? His movement reflected certainty, not confusion, because certainty reflects preparation. How long had he been preparing? Everything remained under control. Control protects stability. What stability mattered most? He had already seen what others would only understand later. What had he seen first? He understood the importance of acting early. Early action protects advantage. Would others act too late? They were waiting for the moment when action would become necessary. Had that moment already arrived? His stability reflected complete control over his mind and emotions. How had he gained that level of control? Protection allowed awareness to remain uninterrupted. What awareness were they protecting? He had already decided internally. What decision had he made? Others were beginning to understand his decision. Would they follow him? They trusted his awareness. Why did they trust him completely? Silence protected clarity. What clarity had emerged? His movement confirmed the decision. What would happen next? Everything was now aligned. What had aligned? He remained completely certain. Why was he so certain? Awareness had already guided him. Where would it lead him next? He was ready. Ready for what? Preparation had protected him. What had he prepared for? He was already ahead. Ahead of what? Timing had given him advantage. Would others recognize it in time? His decision was final. What consequences would follow? Everything had already begun changing. Had anyone else realized it? He had already moved forward. Would others follow him? Because the decision had already been made before anyone else even understood what was happening. Was this the moment everything changed forever? The decision had already been made long before this moment arrived. Not in panic, not in fear, but in complete awareness. Because powerful individuals do not wait for certainty. They act when awareness becomes undeniable. And now, every individual in that room understood that hesitation was no longer an option. Had this moment been inevitable from the beginning? His expression remained calm because he had already accepted the consequences of his decision. Acceptance removes fear, and without fear, clarity becomes absolute. He was no longer questioning the future. He was preparing to control it. What had given him the confidence to accept the unknown? He moved forward with certainty, not because he knew everything, but because he understood enough. Understanding creates confidence, and confidence creates decisive action. What was he about to initiate? Outside, nothing appeared different. The world remained unaware, but inside, everything had already changed. Because awareness changes reality long before reality changes visibly. Had the world already begun shifting without realizing it? One by one, they stood, not because they were told to, but because they had reached the same conclusion independently. Awareness had aligned their decisions. How had they all reached the same conclusion? There was no fear in their movements, only precision. Because fear creates hesitation, and hesitation creates vulnerability. They could not afford vulnerability. What vulnerability had they already eliminated? He began walking toward the exit, not looking back. Because once awareness arrives, there is no return to ignorance. What future was he now walking toward? They did not stop him, because they understood his decision, and they understood what it meant. Had they already decided to follow him? Everything had already been prepared, because preparation ensures survival before action becomes necessary. How long had they been preparing for this moment? The outside world felt different now, not because it had changed, but because his awareness had changed. Had awareness become his greatest advantage? He remained calm, because calmness protects clarity, and clarity protects control. Was he now in complete control? The path forward was clear, not easy, but clear. What sacrifices would this path require? Every step confirmed his decision. There was no hesitation left. Had hesitation already been eliminated? They understood that this was no longer about comfort. It was about survival and control. What future were they protecting? He had already crossed the point of no return. What consequences would follow from this decision? Because powerful individuals act before others understand. Would others ever understand what he had done? And by the time the world realized what had already begun, he was already far ahead, protected by awareness, protected by preparation, and protected by the decision he had made long before anyone else even noticed the truth. Would anyone ever reach his level of awareness?